next session, session 4, and one of the first presentations we will be taking is that which is online. As you are aware, this has been an online conference as well, streaming live as well as locally here. And so our next presenter, who is online now and will be joining us, we will be joining him because he had been waiting for us to come back from lunch. He will be making his presentation on digital banking solution for housing cooperatives. He is Jeffrey Kirumba, Business Development and Partnership Manager, Kwara, Kenya. Shall we welcome him with a round of applause? And as we go to the virtual session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. We can hear you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here today.
Great. Fantastic. We feel the same. How's it over there in Kenya?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's quite evening now, so we're winding up our day. But we're really glad to be here today at the conference. And again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much. The floor is over to you. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I had a short presentation that I had prepared for all of you. I was given a slot of about 15 minutes. I will try to keep it about 15 minutes. And then we'll allow for a very quick question and answer session. I will take your questions as I can. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you'll all be able to see it very soon. Brilliant. I can see we're on. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much for welcoming me to speak with you today. As you heard, my name is Jeffrey Kirumba, the Business Partnerships and Development and Partnerships Manager, and I'll be taking you through a short presentation about digitizing and how you can help your housing cooperative digitize with Kwara. So we can begin. Kwara is a digital banking company that exclusively serves cooperatives. As you all heard today, we are based in Nairobi, but we have a few offices globally, basically to just speak to many of our customers. We have a very ambitious plan to serve cooperatives across the world and give them the technological rails that they will require to get really into the 21st century. Just a quick snapshot of how Kwara works. We have 50 clients globally in 3 markets. So this is in Kenya, in South Africa, and in the Philippines. And Nigeria, of course, naturally will be the next frontier that we will get into. We serve customers with just over $130 million in terms of assets under management and serve over 70,000 members as well. Now, of course, some of the things that we've been able to see So some of the things on the metrics we've been able to track the digitization campaign we've had since Kwara was founded in 2018 is we're able to offer our members 46% average client loan growth, which is as impressive, the most impressive metric on the continent versus what we've been seeing historically in terms of a 10% year-on-year growth, as well as 19% average client member growth versus what is the global average of about 6%. So these are some of the benefits the members who are using Kwara are able to see and are able to have within their cooperatives, whether they're housing or saving the credit, basically just by being able to digitize a lot of the sector. As I mentioned, we are based in Nairobi. We have an office in Berlin where we host our R&D hub. This is basically just a group of engineers who sit with us developing our product and continue working with us to offer value to all clients across the world. And we just recently opened in Manila, and who knows, soon we'll be opening in Abuja or renewables. Now, the problem statement that we came to address is that we understand that while cooperatives are essential pillars in the financial system, they often face very unique challenges relative to banks and MFIs. This, I'm sure, is no less seen in the market where we have the housing cooperatives, because the value proposition that we offer is very different even to the level of cooperatives that we have. Now, some of the major problems that I would like to highlight as part of my presentation are one, the legacy IT system. So you have an ICT system that is not fit for purpose and is capex heavy, of course. Then really forcing cooperatives into making very significant expenditures in the beginning, as well as poor vendor support. The second one is the member digitization. We all know as we continue getting deeper into the 21st century, the expectations of our clients will keep on rising. So we need to keep on thinking about how do we continue to differentiate ourselves, how do we continue to attract young clients, especially in our markets where we know that cooperatives, housing cooperatives, really very corporate, seem to be a preserve of the older generation. How do we continue then to attract new clients and the global needs that really are driven by this for us to be able to expand our cooperatives and grow as other financial institutions are growing. And the third one that we also would like to mention as part of this presentation is the compliance. So being able to have real-time the accuracy in the data that is captured, also as well as the auditing and analytics that then help us get further insights and help us drive better decision-making processes driven by data. Now, these are the largest issues and unique challenges that we see our cooperatives are facing globally, and especially in Nigeria as we have a specific focus on the housing cooperatives. So what we do is Kenya is part of and also offers a banking platform at a member price. We have been able to think about this and how do we then continue to offer this to cooperatives around the world, being able to compete with the larger and more clunky, as I call them, the core systems, while also being fit for purpose, subscription-based, and open for integration by APIs. Now, this is something that is also very important as you keep on seeing, because sometimes you'll find that it's not one platform that's going to offer you all the requirements that you need, but you need to be able to have integration so you have a full ecosystem of systems that really is working together to provide value for the community. So within Para, this is what we do, creating the functions and being able to match the functionality of the larger scale systems, but being, providing these values as you've seen as well, and as well as also providing security, because we know that as we continue to keep on growing, as we continue to keep on, having issuing duties over the assets that our members have, we need to continue having this secure and a very secure platform that people can trust. And of course, within Fire, we will be able to implement this. So basically what Fire does is then helps you yield the immense advantages to cooperatives looking to grow rapidly. Within our admin platform, have automatic transaction processing for staff, basically having the staff who are working at the cooperative, really having the power of a digital platform that provides the best automation possible in that market as well. But also being able to provide real-time finance comparing for our members via mobile. Now, this, of course, is very important for us because it's not just a platform that we're building for the cooperative itself, but also how do we continue engaging our members every time outside of office hours, how do we continue engaging our members that we build our mobile apps. So speaking about this, very briefly, I will just explain how our product range looks like, so that you have a full understanding of what itself it could offer. There's a core platform, which is the core banking platform, which is basically a very powerful tool that manages the members, the savings and the credit that you offer in that platform, as well as being able to provide the background accounting, finance, and reporting capabilities as you would require from the core system. The second part of the product range is really the core effect, which is the online and mobile banking, as I had mentioned before, helping cooperatives to offer full digital banking services so that members can transact from anywhere and anywhere. The third one that we'd also like to mention is a Fire Open, which is a set of APIs that then says, this is what the product itself does, how then can we integrate third-party services, continue offering a holistic service to our clients and to the members. Just a bit in terms of touching on also some of the testimonials that we get from our clients. This is some of the clients that we have trust Aquara in the time that we've been here and continue to trust us going forward. So, some of them, this is one of the larger ones that are based in Kenya, but wanted an efficient, secure, and fast platform, for example, and we're able to manage Aquara. Secondly, Aquara is not just built for the large cooperative, we also have been able to build a platform that really is usable by corporate cooperative of any size. So even on the other end of the spectrum, we have some circles that are pretty small. These circles, for example, Tamara Youth Credit Union, who expected an onboarding process to be quite lengthy and time intensive, but the efforts we require to make it quite seamless and effortless. Now, I mentioned a bit earlier in the presentation about the security that is required for us to be able to continue having trust and building trust from new clients and as well as the existing ones. So what we also offer as part of this is the banking grade security trusted by financial institutions worldwide, offering over 99.99% uptime and also less than 2 minutes charge report as well. As of security, of course, the platform itself has been verified and given certifications for various quality and security control. So basically, this is something that we're all thinking about. The question is then how do we do it? Yeah? That really is what we've been thinking about prior, and we've been able to develop a product that really then addresses these issues. The other part of the advantage that we'd like to very quickly speak to is the advantage that you get with cloud computing, basically meaning that your platform becomes infinitely scalable, which basically means on-demand access to more processing, on-demand access to more storage, meeting the data residency requirements as it would required as well, meaning that the cooperative itself, regardless of the size, regardless of the number of transactions, regardless of the number of users on the platform at any one time, really then maintains that elasticity and scalability, maintaining the same usability really across itself. Now, this, I think, is going to be very interesting for the housing cooperatives themselves. What we also have been able to come up with is a flexible and configurable platform for full independence. So every housing cooperative, every cooperative itself has the full freedom to create its own product with its own terms, whether it's a savings product or a deposit product. This is the power that has been given to you to create your own product, as well as then start transacting on them. Same for the branches as well as then helping you analyze your income and expenditures through general ledger accounting. So this in itself also really presents a value for the housing cooperatives to be very innovative in terms of the products that they create for themselves. You don't have to follow one rule book, and all this is of course then supported by a platform. So this is something that we are also very proud of in our sector. Now, again, not to belabor the point, the cooperatives themselves can also give members their own mobile application that helps them do balances, download statements, and carry out online loan application. These, of course, are directed and linked, helping increase your member engagement, reduce support requests, and engaging a young digital native citizen class that we know has really been inaccessible from the cooperative market, especially in these market files. So that was a very brief presentation. I was told that just to speak 10 to 15 minutes, so that was all I wanted to present today. I would like to open the floor briefly, if the moderator would allow me, for a few questions, after which I think choice.
All right, sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, do we have anyone who has a question, please? The mobile mics. Question, please. Question, comment, clarification on the issue. Okay, please, sir, could you, if you don't mind.
My question is a straightforward one. Is it open source? I stepped out for a moment, I may have missed it. Is it an open source system, or do you have to have I saw in one of your screens, I saw Oracle and a few other rather expensive providers. Is it open source?
Okay, the screen itself that I presented was basically speaking to the comparison of the different systems. So it is not an Oracle or a complex solution. However, the question is done at made affordable and very efficient for the use by housing cooperatives. So it is not open source, but then still, I think I know are affordable really compared to the competition.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Just one.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other questions or clarifications? Okay, is someone raising? Okay. Oh, you were just raising your phone up. Okay, that was a selfie moment. Okay. All right. So would you like to grace us with? No. Okay, so one more question.
Jeff, thank you very much for joining us from Kenya. Digital banking is something that you have used to the benefit of cooperatives out there. If you want to start similar thing in Nigeria, what do you recommend? How do we go about it? Especially not just for general cooperatives, but cooperative housing. You can elucidate a little bit on that. That will help us a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And like it's not even on the product itself, it's really then on how can we then start forming digital competence for our markets, especially in Nigeria. My answer for that is really simple. I think that now we're really getting into an age where you can have, a digital native first cooperative, a housing cooperative in itself. But housing cooperatives are a bit different because, of course, you have assets in terms of the housing. However, everything else does or is possible to be digital. So if you think about the new bank model that we're seeing, with Nigeria being the lead, with the examples of like Kuda, what we can do, or what I think really is then how do we most efficiently start this conversation, not having what was done before. Now, that of course then begins with the conversation of saying that how do I automate, how do I digitize as many of the processes from the beginning without having to then go through the whole pain of actually then start a circle and then digitize. So my answer is in that case, then of course with the mindset that we're starting a digital platform, a digital housing cooperative, then being able to come up with digitization such as Quora, for example, that then helps you digitize all these processes and then sort of go to market with a neobank or a neo cooperative in this case that then already offers all these capabilities to our customers and to our members. I think that really is how the future will look like, especially in terms of cooperatives. You don't have to go back and go through all the stages that the other cooperatives have gone through. This is really then an opportunity for us to leapfrog and start on the front foot.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. If I might ask, you mentioned something earlier about the future of cooperatives and getting younger people involved who sometimes feel a bit out of place with the older people who normally run most of these cooperatives. With digital cooperatives now, are we talking about a new cooperative system, or what can we do to ensure that we don't lose the old and we don't lose the new? We have everybody together. What's been your experience of that?
Yeah, so we're not reimagining the value proposition of it, because the cooperative itself has a very good value proposition in itself. So housing cooperatives, people can get their houses, people can then, even if it's a single room, people can already use that to be able to get housing for themselves. So the value proposition itself will really exist. We just need to be able to reimagine how we are then engaging with this. People are not going to come to the branch to fill out a form, to make a deposit, to carry out any transaction there. It's then how we present ourselves and how we're interacting with this new age of people who will be investors and who will be landlords and tenants. So in that way, we are just then presenting how it looks like at the back end, also really then improving our automation and then providing a product that says, you don't even really need to go, but you can still be part of a housing cooperative. But it's fully digital. You can make it payments digitally without ever having to do the company. That's really what the new age is looking for in terms of the capability to work from anywhere, to work from anywhere, and interact with the cooperative, not just during office hours, but anytime I have a bit of money and so on and so forth.
I think that's quite simple. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amy. So we're going to ask any other question, any other comment? If we don't have any other, Jeffrey would like to thank you for joining us. Your presentation has been fantastic. I am already fired up, and I'm going to make a few phone calls after I leave here to see what we can get started. This is very, very inspiring. Thank you very much. Any last words for us?
No, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much for having me. I think the future is now. This is really the only way that we can continue to be relevant in our markets, to be able to be very innovative and ahead of the curve. And I really congratulate you for having this conference today, and I really wish you all the best in your future discussions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Media, are we set for the next one? I will take the video. I know there's a video that came in. Is the video ready, or you just need a few minutes? Okay, let me clarify something with media, and I'll be back. All right, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm just happy to announce we will move to the next virtual presentation. And at this point in time, we'll be talking about cooperative housing, structure, operations, and benefits by Julie DePalm, Secretary General, Cooperative Housing International, Canada. Hello, Julie.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
What time is it in Canada?
It's morning here.
It's morning, oh wow.
It's 9:45.
Oh wow, it's about a quarter to 4 o'clock here, 4 p.m. here in Nigeria, Abuja. It's a pleasure, good to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
It's my pleasure.
So, you're going to be talking about cooperative housing structure, operations, and benefits. I'm Nigerian. I'm wondering, do you guys have cooperatives in Canada? I mean, a lot of us will say, a number of us will
Yes.
say, really? So it's not just okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll love to hear you. Okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I will share my screen on my presentation. There we go. So is that visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, I'm Julie DePalm, Secretary General for Cooperative Housing International, and I'm based in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you very much for inviting me for this opportunity to talk about cooperative housing.
Right, it's a pleasure to have you, Julie. Please go ahead.
So, cooperative housing is part of the global cooperative movement and represents the housing sector for clients, the APEX organization.
Did we lose her?
Recording in progress that often lead to meaningful partnerships and collaborations. In our communications program, we share co-op housing news, successes, and developments in our social media channels. I'll talk about that later. So basically reuniting the cooperative housing sector. We also have over 30 members throughout the world that are represented on all the continents. So first, I'm going to talk about the different housing models that exist. Housing cooperatives are part of a community-led movement that is gaining momentum in many countries. They're providing housing solutions that meet the communal and democratic. We're just visiting housing cooperatives in many countries, and not one is the same. And that's the beauty of this housing model. It's flexible and it's very adaptable to the local situation. And the governance model gives democratic control to residents who get a vote on everything from the budget to parking policies. So I'm going to talk about all the different models. Some are rental, some are member-owned, some are small with only 10 members, and others are very large with over 10,000 members. So housing cooperatives generally fall into two general tenure categories. So the non-equity model, which is usually referred to as the rental model, and then the ownership model, which is referred to as the equity or the strata model. And so I'm going to talk about each one a little bit more deeply here. So we'll start with the rental. So the rental model is generally geared to be an affordable housing model. It's not cost housing. There's no equity. The shares and deposits are returned when members move out. It's usually a mixed income, which ensures that there's a diverse population living in the co-op. And it also ensures security of tenure. So a member has the right to live in a co-op. Their right is protected as long as they're following all of the rules. And there's also a strong sense of community because members actively participate in all aspects of running the co-op. In the ownership model or the equity model, when you buy into a co-op, you become a shareholder in a co-op corporation that owns the property. As a shareholder, you are entitled to exclusive use of a housing unit in the property. So this model is quite common in Sweden and in Norway and parts of the USA, mostly in New York City. The cooperative system in Sweden is well established, and it's a very common way to be housed. There are over 500,000 co-op apartments in Sweden alone, which represents about 10% of the population. In equity co-ops, occupancy rights are sometimes granted by way of the purchase agreement, and legal instruments are registered on the title. So that way the members obtain the right to occupy a home, but they share the communal resources of the co-op that is owned by the cooperative organization. So the co-op's articles of incorporation and their bylaws, as well as their occupancy agreement, specifies the cooperative's rules. There's also the limited equity model, which is widely used in the US. It's designed to preserve affordability for low and moderate income households. It's common in the US, and it's slowly being adopted here in Canada as well, mostly in the province of Quebec. So the equity portion is your money that is being held back by the co-op to help finance the housing co-op, such as maintain and upgrade the assets to ensure that the housing remains viable for future generations. And then the equity is normally paid out when the member moves out of the co-op, which includes any interest that has been earned. The units have restricted resale values, and many have income limits for potential members who pay a monthly fee or a carrying charge to cover their share of the co-op's expenses. So co-ops have different rules of resale, and they may be restricted to low or moderate income members. The next model is the mutual self-help model. So the homes are owned by the cooperative, not by the individuals or the families, but each family has the legal right to use their home. So this is a form of self-managed organization that facilitates access to an adequate habitat for families with limited economic resources based on the principle of housing as a human right. The right can be passed down to future generations or exchanged for the money and the work hours that were put into the community, but it can't be sold. So the cooperative members are not just workers and residents, they're also the administrators and the organizers of the co-op. So all decisions are made in democratic meetings, and this continues after the construction is finished. So the members are actually also involved in the construction of the co-op. And it's usually a combination of self-build and government assistance and government support. So this is a model that the Federation of Housing Cooperatives in Uruguay has used, and they've taught this model in over 15 countries, and including Latin America and in Europe. It's also very easily adaptable to local conditions. So through the self-help model, it involves the residents in the housing process and encourages partnerships between community residents and health professionals and local authorities. And it also develops an economic framework for cooperation and self-help. It is a little bit of an offshoot of the self-help model. So this is a model that has been used in Spain in a co-op called La Borda. It's the first meant the grant of use model, which is a model that's characterized by the collective ownership of the housing property. So the cooperative has the right to use the land for 75 years from the city of Barcelona in exchange for an annual fee. So the members pay a contribution to the co-op. So they don't own their apartments, and they're not tenants either. So the model of granted use is used in, as I said, in Uruguay and also in Denmark. The model eliminates the property speculation and profiteering on the fundamental right to housing. So the member, they can't sell their flat, to the traditional over the promotes community cohesion and reduces costs because members participate in the construction of the building and the community spaces. They have direct involvement in the development of the co-op, and the residents participate in the decision-making and the management through multiple committees. Like they have a legal committee, architecture committee, economic, communications, secretariat, self-build, and communal living. So those are the central hubs of the cooperative. Wrap up of the different, move into different saving mechanisms and cooperative housing. So we'll start with, we'll go back to thinking this innovative ownership model. They also had a very interesting, used very interesting financial mechanisms. So finance at the margins of the
Hello, Julie. I seem to have lost you. Hello? Okay. Don't worry, we'll get her back in a minute.
Recording in progress.
To work up this path. Hello?
Hello. I think we're having a little...
So this...
Okay, go ahead. If you can, we can't see you yet, but if we can hear you.
Sorry. Is an ethical and solidarity-based is to contribute to the social transformation of the economy and society. So, so they received around La Borda, the co-op, received around 52% of the necessary funds through the participatory loans, which was the contributions of the members. Some home equity loans, and then they also issued some equity loans. So the equity bonds provided a large amount of money, around 865,000 euros, through the emission of equity bonds. So each bond was at a value of 1,000 euros. And so they promoted this by organizing a campaign to raise awareness among the public and social organizations to invest their savings into the project, for which it offered a better annual interest return than banks. So it was a way to stimulate investment and recognizing the importance in the trust of the project. So that is one example. And then now we'll move on to Sweden. Sweden and Norway, the co-op housing federations have a saving mechanism where future members, so before you even move into a co-op, you can put your savings into a savings deposit that will, once you're ready to purchase your co-op home, you can put those savings towards the purchase. And the state guarantees any bank loans that people will take out to purchase their unit. And as I mentioned before, 10% of the population own a unit in a housing co-op. So, and then there's also very few rental co-ops. They're all ownership. So just to touch on also on state support. So using Canada as an example, there is an agency that is manages the federal co-op housing programs in 4 provinces. All the other provinces manage their own co-op housing program. So basically what the agency does is that it monitors how co-ops are doing financially and physically. And this way it ensures that the co-ops remain financially viable for future generations. So each co-op is assigned remaining, on board that their financial and physical performance is conforming to certain standards, and that the state of the buildings are in good state of repair, and that the co-op's finances are viable. And just as an example, sorry, there's a lot of noise.
Technical, can we please sort that out?
Okay, thank you. So here in Canada, we have a Crown corporation called Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So that's a Crown corporation of the government. And it was formed to provide housing for the soldiers that were coming back from the Second World War. Because there wasn't enough housing, there was this influx of housing that was built, and that's when this agency was created, and its mandate was to assist housing for all Canadians. It has since grown into a large mortgage insurance program, and it also provides seed funding to support affordable housing through interest-free loans or non-repayable contributions. And they are also administering the National Housing Strategy, which was the first time for Canada to have an actual comprehensive strategy that covered the entire country. So that's just a quick example of state support. And then just to go into another form of financing, is income generation activity. So here is an example from Mushikulu Hopusing Housing in Kenya. So they are building and selling bricks as a form of generating income. So parts of the income will go towards the cooperative, and then another portion would be so that families can have an income, and be able to afford to live in the co-op. So the main objective of the cooperative is to bring members together to raise capital to mitigate the shortage of houses for both business and shelter in the area. So in this particular cooperative, there's 300 registered members, and they've been raising their savings from salaries and wages from doing business in the area. Or from providing services to nearby institutions, and the brick making, it will add to that income generation. And then with COVID-19 and the pandemic and the lockdowns, this posed a very negative challenge to the cooperative and to their families. With most businesses closing and people losing their jobs, the brick-making initiative was a way of circumnavigating that. Another form of income generation is revolving funds. So here we have an example from the Senegalese Federation of Inhabitants, who also received technical support from an NGO called Wilbasen, and they developed a home improvement and reconstruction program aimed at improving the living and housing conditions for households that are affected by recurrent floods in the suburbs of Dakar. So the program is based in community mobilization and community finance through the establishment of a revolving fund for urban renewal, which uses community savings and international cooperation, as well as solidarity loans from the Habitat Solidarity Fund, which is a solidarity mechanism that finances the construction of collaborative housing in countries where vulnerable populations do not have access to affordable credit. So there's 12,000, so the Senegalese Federation of Inhabitants has more than 12,000 members, mostly women, from grassroots community organizations, organizing more than 520 savings groups in the regions of Dakar, Thiès, and Louga. So Wilbasen provides the necessary technical support and assistance, supervising the construction, training local craftsmen, construction. The opportunity for households that are living on low and irregular incomes to access housing finance that's normally not accessible to them. So most of the households source revenue is in the informal sector, and they can't afford the high interest rates, or they don't fit the requirements of banks or microfinance institutions. So the revolving fund gives them the opportunity to borrow and to pay back. So another form of raising funds is by doing a community share offer. So this is an example in the UK with student co-op homes. It's a multi-stakeholder model that's adopted for the society. So there's 75% that are user members and 25% are investors, investor owners. So to join as an investor member, you pay £50, and then you get an interest minimum sharehold of £250, and you can opt for either no interest or the full interest, which is a maximum of 4%. And then the share capital is withdrawable, and then the capital raised from the share issue will be used to buy properties that are in turn leased to individual student housing co-ops. And so with this particular community share offer, they raised well above what they had intended. I think they raised over £200,000, or maybe it was more than that. I would have to check that. But anyways, it was a huge success, and so they were able to buy 2 student co-op homes with this community share. And then the SACCOs, which some of you are probably very familiar with. It's a democratic, member-driven, self-help form of cooperative. It's owned, governed, and managed by its members who have the same common bond, which is either working for the same employer, belonging to the same church or the same labor union. Could even be, a group that wants to form a housing cooperative together. So its primary objective is to mobilize savings and afford access to loans on competitive terms as a way of enhancing members' socioeconomic well-being. So a form of savings that is formed by people who have a common goal. And another example of a type of community share, but it's a sustainability bond. So this is something that has been recently done in Switzerland. So traditionally the financing was done through the banks, but now there's more actors that are entering into the housing market, such as pension funds, large companies, utility companies, because they see it as a very stable form of investment. So now investors are willing to invest directly in housing cooperatives. So for example, an electric company is willing to give short-term loans of up to 1 year for cooperative housing, because the cooperative housing model is seen as one that is secure. And so that gives a lot of opportunities for young cooperatives. So in this particular instance, the cooperative was able to raise 120 million Swiss francs, which is fairly similar in euros, maybe 115 million euros, and it's not asset backed, so that's a big difference. So it's based on this is a large housing cooperative. It's based on the performance of their balance sheet. And they've been in existence for over 100 years, and so they're seen as being low risk through through their performance over those years. And so over a period of 10 years, the cooperative is saving 3 million euros compared to what it would have cost them had they used a traditional mortgage. And just to touch on the structure of the cooperative housing sector, I'm using Canada as an example because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. So there's different levels of cooperative housing associations. So we have the Canadian Federation, that's the umbrella organization for the country, and then either like in each province and in regions within that province, there are smaller federations. And then so they offer a variety of member services, from education and providing resources, doing advocacy work, working on, like for example, we just had a federal election campaign. So the Co-op Housing Federation of Canada, along with some other housing organizations, participated in a large awareness campaign to raise awareness about the lack of housing and the lack of affordable housing. And so they really brought that on the table as an election issue. So that's one of the services that they offer, and they offer financial advice. They were offering COVID-19 advice on how to take their meetings online, how to hold virtual meetings, how to change co-op's bylaws so that they could hold these meetings, and then also different programs, awards, and grants and scholarships. And they also offer co-op services such as meeting support services, especially during the times of COVID, on how to hold these virtual meetings, co-op housing development, offering advice to fledgling groups who want to develop a housing co-op, lobbying government for developing more co-ops, group buying programs, so that bulk purchasing can be done for housing co-ops, and negotiating deals with appliance suppliers or construction material suppliers. When you approach a supplier, as a block, as opposed to each individual co-op, their benefits can be had by that. And they also offer property management services and asset management services. So that's sort of like in a nutshell how the co-op housing sector is organized in Canada. And an example in the UK of shifts within the different organizations that offer community-led housing services and development, and partnering with government. So here it is. It's called the Community-Led Homes Program. So it has funding that's available to groups at every stage of the community-led housing journey up to when the project is completed. So there's like the forming the group stage, the site and plan stages, and then the building stages. So they offer all of these services. They also provide training and accreditation. So they have a program to create advisors who can go and support all these individual housing groups that are creating new housing co-ops and other forms of community-led housing. So this is a very successful program that's been in existence for a number of years, and it's allowed for a really strong network of community-led housing groups with a number of funding opportunities. And here they also have a resource. It's a guide on forming partnerships between housing associations and community-led housing groups. And it also lays out all the different stages and all the different steps that like a housing co-op or a community-led housing group has to go through to form a housing co-op. So it's a very useful resource. And just to slowly wrap up here, just to talk about the benefits of cooperative housing. For example, the COVID recovery, there was a study that was conducted by AHFIS and Earl Damon. It was a global study to assess the interrelations between the type of housing and the extent to which residents were affected by COVID-19. And it was found that around 40% of the respondents that were living in irregular land ownership were threatened with eviction, whereas people that were living on collective land ownership showed that they hadn't been threatened with evictions at all. So there's one advantage. Affordability is another one. Monthly housing charges are set by the members themselves to cover the costs of running the co-op. So co-ops charge their members only enough to cover the costs of repairs and reserves, and they can offer housing that's much more affordable than average private sector rental costs. And then on the democratic side, involving tenants and members, and residents, and decision-making is a management approach that only helps to give tenants greater dignity and pride in their residence, but also assists in keeping the housing costs down. So, member involvement leads to higher satisfaction and greater interest in self-development among members. Members are more likely to take better care of their rented units and their common spaces, resulting in less wear and tear on the units, as well as vandalism. And furthermore, greater tenant involvement can lead to management making more informed decisions relating to expenditures. Security of tenure is another benefit. Members have the right to live in the co-op. Their right is protected as long as they're following all of the co-op's rules. And they can, members can live in their co-op for as long as they wish, as long as they're following the rules. And then also, belonging to in a co-op, you're also belonging to a regional network, a national network, and an international network. So that aspect of solidarity is providing the resources, access to resources, access to education, and being able to network and learn about best practices from other colleagues. So to conclude, so co-op housing is not an easy thing to develop. You need financial resources for creating, scaling currently affordable community-led housing. You need financial and human capital. Either the cooperative organizations themselves or the members that can contribute with capital, either member fees or shares, or you need bank finance with a guarantee. You might need state loans. You need some kind of public support in the form of loans, grants, land leases. The legal framework. So it's not an easy solution. Capital is needed. Either the cooperative organizations themselves or the members contribute, with the capital. So partnering with a lender is essential. And as you saw with the different finance mechanisms, creativity and innovation is also crucial. So lastly, thank you very much for this opportunity to share very quickly about all the different aspects of cooperative housing. And I could spend hours just talking about the financing alone. So if you want to find out more, we do share a lot of stories about successes and all of the different innovations that are happening on social media. And we also launched a podcast called Co-op Conversations that highlights the benefits of living in a housing co-op by talking to people who live in housing co-ops and experts who work in the field as well. So you can find that wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. So that concludes my presentation. I hope I didn't go too quickly, but I had to cram that in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think everybody here would agree that the presentation was quite incisive. It wasn't fast at all, so that was good. Just as a recap, Julie is the Secretary General, Cooperative Housing International, Canada. So very quickly, does anybody have any question or comment? All right, Julie, okay, there's a question, but I'd also like to remind you to please help us send your presentation to the email provided to you so that we can distribute it and participants could get to go over it again. Thank you very much. But we have a question here from Engineer Abubakar Jibril, as the Federal Director of Cooperatives at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Development. So, sir, off to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just like you said, it was a very, very educative presentation, and I must admit I learned a lot from it. And as the discussions, progressed, especially when she got to the case of the sustainability bond approach in Switzerland, I was quite enthused, and I was wondering if that can also be applicable in Nigeria, or put in another way, what among all these options, which one can she recommend for a typical Nigerian setting where a large number of the people are resource poor, yet, and apart from being resource poor, their incomes are not certain to come. They are either farmers or people in the struggling or informal sector. Which of these approach will she recommend for us? Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, over to you.
Yeah, well, not being completely familiar with with how things are in Nigeria, but based on what you were saying, people are income resource poor and are earning low incomes. I would say that the SACCOs is probably the way to go. That's the model that's being used widely in other African countries. And then the revolving fund, I would say, would be another one. But that involves partnering with an organization that can set up a form of like solidarity fund that other organizations contribute to, and so that you set up a pool of money. You've got a basic foundation of capital, and that people can borrow from. And then they can pay back into it so that it can continue helping other organizations or helping other people. So this is something that's being used in Senegal, and if you're interested, I can connect you with people that have been using this form of funding for quite a few years now, and I'm sure there's a lot of as they say, the devil is in the details. So. Happy to connect anyone with with actors on the ground to learn from what they've learned from this process.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to having your slide, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, and you as well.
Bye. All right, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We'll move on very quickly to the next virtual presentation as well, and this is Green and Resilient Building by Olivia Caldwell Nielsen, Associate Principal, Miyamato International. Miyamato International. Do we have her on now?
Yes, I'm right here.
All right, media.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hello, how are you doing? What? I can't. Okay, okay. All right.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you can hear me.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see you yet. Technical, what do we need to do? Okay, aha, now we can see you.
Is this better? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, my internet connection is a bit unstable.
Oops, okay, you're back.
Okay, I will share my screen now. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, now we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me here. My topic today is about combining housing resilience with green housing. And it's very important because I think most of you already know about the elements of green housing, about saving energy, saving water, and the life cycle of buildings process. But I think a newer or something that's less known is that making a building resilient to natural disasters in order to enhance its sustainability. So that's kind of the topic of my presentation today, which I think is very relevant as COP26 is underway right now. And just as a reminder, buildings generate 40% of annual global CO2 emissions. So anything we can do to reduce the emissions of buildings will go a very, very long way. And housing is very, very important because housing in most cities represents 70% of the building stock. Residential buildings are 70% of the building stock. So anything we can do in the housing sector will greatly, greatly help our planet in many, many ways. Every single house we build has to be green, and we need to work on making existing houses green. And maybe this is not very known, but over 1/3 of the energy consumed by a building, including a house, is already met by the time the building is built. So that's, just by the time you're done constructing the house, 1/3 of the energy is already consumed. And that's because construction materials have a high amount of energy embodied in them. And so anything we can do to just reduce that footprint from the very beginning is so, so important. And that's why we need to build to last. Every single building we build today needs to exist for generations and generations to come. This is so, so important. Also, the buildings that exist today are probably still going to be here in 20, 30 years. My company, Miyamoto International, focuses on reducing disaster risk. And we do so by really increasing the resilience of the built environment, including homes. And even though this is about resilience, it is really about sustainability, because disasters cause destruction comes with demolition, and then rebuilding. And all of this has a huge carbon footprint. We've calculated it after disasters, removing the debris, rebuilding anew. All of this is just a staggeringly high carbon footprint, and we just cannot afford it anymore. We can't afford it financially. We definitely can afford it with the lives lost. And we can't afford it for our planet, too. We need to build well from the beginning. And even though Africa is not as badly hit by disasters as other continents, there are still earthquakes, there are still cyclones, there are still landslides that affect the continent. And even new buildings, and I know you know this in Nigeria, can be hit hard. These are buildings in Indonesia that have not even been occupied yet, and they have to be completely destroyed and rebuilt because they were affected by an earthquake. This happens all the time. You see it all the time. And as engineers, we know that the costs of building correctly from the beginning are not very high. It can be 1%, 2% more, but then your building will last for decades. But disasters aren't the only destroyers. We always talk about cyclones and earthquakes, but these are houses in Gabon that were built and abandoned before they were even given away because the developer ran out of money, there was a problem on the site. And think about the waste, the waste of land, the waste of financial resources, but also the environmental waste. all of this concrete that was used here had a carbon footprint. And that is just a huge waste. Poorly planned housing also is just hugely wasteful. These are little castles in Turkey, and I think they're very funny, they're very cute, but it turned out that nobody wanted to live in little castles. So now you have a huge abandoned community of little castles. And the environmental footprint of this is staggeringly high. We need to build to meet people's needs. We need to listen to people and figure out what they want. Otherwise, the problems are insurmountable. And now this one is a really important one, and I think is really relevant for Nigeria and other countries in Africa. In the US, we built tens of thousands of housing units, of public housing units in the 50s. And then 2 decades later, in the 70s, we had to demolish them. And not because they weren't well built, but because they were built in bad areas, in areas without access to economic resources, without access to education. They were disconnected from the rest of the city. They became ghettos. And we said, okay, this is bad. We need to destroy them and rebuild anew. And if you think about this, the environmental impact, the financial impact of building tens of thousands of housing units, and then 2 decades later only having to destroy them is just astonishing. So, when we think about the housing stock, we're always talking about building new homes. We need to focus on, and that's true, we do need to focus on building new homes, and those new homes do need to be green, they do need to be well built. But the truth is that the majority of houses that exist today will still exist in 30 years. And when we think about that, we need to make sure that the houses that were built today or exist today are well maintained. Because we cannot continue seeing these houses degrading over time and needing to be rebuilt. And over and over again, as I go to African countries, I always see this focus on new housing. We need to build 100,000 new homes. We need to build 1 million new homes. And that's true. And 41 out of 54 African countries have announced these large housing projects. But what I rarely see, and I would love to see more of, is programs to upgrade the existing housing stock, as well as these new housing constructions, because we need both. The houses that exist today need to be greener and they need to be more resilient. We're going to face so many climate change crises in the coming decades. We need to prepare the existing housing stock to face those crises. And governments can launch ambitious programs to do so. And I don't want to close on a sad note, but you see in the news and these buildings collapsing, and they're collapsing for no reason but the bad construction itself. And as climate shocks continue to face our cities, more and more buildings will be at risk. The urgency of retrofitting buildings has never been greater. We need to retrofit buildings to be greener, and we need to retrofit them to be safer. And that is really what my company is focusing on. The built environment needs to protect us. It needs to provide a safe home and haven for us. It cannot be a life-threatening risk. Because every time we do so, lives are lost, financial resources are lost, and the environment is impacted. And so to close on a note of hope, it doesn't have to be expensive. Retrofitting buildings, people always think, it's too expensive. It's going to cost millions of dollars for a big building, or it's going to cost $4,000 for a small building. Not necessarily. And the good news is that engineering companies like mine and others are going around the world, and we're collecting practices from Nepal, from Japan, from the US, from Latin America, to try to find the best retrofit solutions to bring down the costs. To retrofit a small home can only cost maybe $50 to $100, and then that home will last 50 years. We really need to find solutions to bring down these costs, to make homes greener, to make them more resilient to disasters, so that we can last for decades to come. Thank you very much. I know I'm the last to present today, so I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Thank you. All right, questions, comments at this point in time? Please, the microphones, please. Questions, comments. All right, Olivia, let me start. Here in Nigeria, the Green Deal isn't such a big thing yet. A lot of people haven't caught up to the idea of building, environmentally friendly. We're more concerned about cost immediately. How can I get it cheaper? How can I get it done in time and within my budget without inconveniencing myself so much? What would you suggest that we do to be able to sell the idea that even now it is still a good idea to, begin to think in that direction and have people commit in that direction? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the World Bank IFC's EDGE app. And the EDGE app is really cool. I've used it in many countries around the world because it enables you to simulate green building options and choose the one that is the best fit for your building and your budget.
Okay.
And what the EDGE app shows is that building green is definitely not much more expensive. It can actually be, a very, very small incremental cost, but it will save the household so much money along the life cycle of the home. So maybe I'm paying a few $100s more upfront now, but over the months, my water and energy bills will be much, much lower.
All right, that's good. I think that's quite sellable. I think I can sell that here. All right. Any other questions, comments? Right, Olivia, it seems as if you sold yourself very well, so I think everybody here kind of gets the picture. Last words, I'll just give you 2 or 3 minutes. Anything you want to say before we let you go?
No, that's about it. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have afterwards. And I encourage you to build well, not only to build affordable, but to build green, to build resilient, because whatever we build today, we want it to last, for your children and your grandchildren for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Olivia, please do remember to send us your presentation via the email address presented, and it'll be a pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a good day. All right, that was, I think, a very interesting and straightforward presentation. We're glad to have that. I know, like we said, in Nigeria, we don't immediately care so much about it, but like she said, one of the reasons why this is important, if we build, I was talking to an Italian architect based in Nigeria, and he goes around and he doesn't understand most of our buildings. We spend more on electricity to cool the buildings, while with just a little adjustments, a little changing to our structure, most of our building could be significantly cooler, thereby reducing the cost you are going to pay on electricity bills. You may be skipping on electricity bills now, but with the cash crunch, you know that in the nearest future, everybody will be paying what they should pay for electricity. And at that point in time, you would wish that you made these little changes to your structure to ensure that you save a little bit on electricity, you save a little bit on water, better windows, position your windows properly. I know someone who lived in apartments. They didn't consider the position of the rising sun when they built their apartment. So some of the rooms are terribly hot. And so they have to spend a lot of money with electricity, just that simple. So you may not consider it now, but in 1 year after you move into the house, you will wish you did. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move into another level of presentation. We have a presenter who is here with us, and he is going to be taking us on developing cooperative housing federations in Nigeria. And he is the Director of Cooperatives, Federal Directorate of Cooperatives of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Can we please welcome Engineer Abubakar Jibril for his presentation.
Thank you very much, our amiable MC. Like he said, the title of my presentation is Developing Housing Cooperative Federation in Nigeria. And why is this topic very important? We all agree that housing is a big problem, it's a big deal in Nigeria. there is a very significant housing deficit in Nigeria, whether in the urban areas or at the rural areas. So if we are able to put up a scheme that will enable people both in the urban centers as well as the rural areas, to enable them to access houses, I believe it's going to go a long way in reducing the stress that Nigerians go through. This is apart from the fact that in the process of making the houses available, we are going to be generating employment for people, we are going to be creating wealth, we are going to be solving a whole lot of challenges people are facing. So that the use or the concept of using a housing cooperative is expected to solve a lot of these problems, getting people to have houses, creating jobs for people, enabling people to exit poverty. So I wouldn't know, unfortunately I wasn't here yesterday, I wouldn't know to what extent we have been introduced into cooperatives, but I will only just give a short explanation of what cooperatives are. And cooperatives are basically business entities. They are business that are jointly owned. We can go to the next slide. Cooperatives are jointly owned, democratically controlled enterprise established to meet the members' social, economic, and cultural needs as well as aspirations. So anytime people come together, anytime people have a particular felt need, a desire, a wish, a challenge, they can always come together and see how they will be able to solve or address that challenge by forming a cooperative. And like you can see on the screen, we have cooperatives in virtually every sector or aspect of human endeavor. We have agricultural cooperatives, we have mining cooperative, we have investment and credit cooperative, we have finance cooperatives. Indeed, the SACCOs, the savings cooperative, the SACCOs of Kenya that we saw in the last one presentation is also a cooperative society, actually. In fact, it's one cooperative society that is able to contribute close to 45% of to Kenya's GDP. They are very strong, and we understand for any president to emerge, you have to come and seek their support. And there are times that they even advance loans to the government of Kenya. So, meaning that we have finance cooperatives, investment cooperatives, transport cooperatives, housing cooperatives like the one we are trying to talk about. In Nigeria, we have 4 tiers of cooperatives. We have what we call the primary cooperative societies. We have the secondary cooperative societies or the unions. We have the tertiary or state apexes, and we have the national primary or national apexes. The structure, as we can see, is pyramidal or triangular, as you might want to look at it. The cooperative societies, the primary societies are the villages, are the towns, are the primary cooperative societies. If the people in Nyanya come together to form their own housing cooperatives, they are going to be a primary cooperative. And by the arrangements in Nigeria, there are 2 levels of registration and regulation of cooperatives. The primary cooperatives are registered and regulated by state departments of cooperatives. Every state in Nigeria has a department of cooperatives, and it is this department that registered primary cooperative society. They are also the ones that regulate them. Then, at the local government headquarters level, when the primary cooperative societies come together, they form the cooperative union. I'm sure you might have been seeing farmers cooperative society, and then in another place you will see rice producers cooperative union. You will be wondering which one is union, which one is society. It is when a group of cooperative societies that are in a particular sector that have similar ideas, similar interests. Maybe they are into agricultural production, or maybe they are into rice production, or fish production, or housing. When we have housing cooperative in Yanya under AMAC, and we also have housing cooperatives in Buari, and another one in Kwali. Something of that nature. You know, in AMAC, we have Nyanya, we have Gariki, we have all those areas. AMAC is like a local government area. So the towns under AMAC, when they have primary cooperative society, at the AMAC level, they come together to form cooperative union, like cooperative housing union. And then at the state headquarters level, the unions coalesce, come together to form the state apex of that sector cooperative society. Like we can have the state apex of, let's say, FCT cooperative housing society. When we have it up, maybe we go to a state, because the situation in state will be a little clearer. When you take a state, let's say, like Kwara, that has a number of local governments, when the unions at the local government come together at the state headquarters level in Ilorin, then they form the state apex of the housing cooperative. So we have the state apex and we have the national apex. The national apexes are formed if we have state apexes in a minimum of 5 geopolitical zones of the country. All these arrangements are intended to ensure that there is national spread and there is grassroots reach by the respective cooperative societies. Let's go to the next slide, which is more of what I have explained. We have said it, primary cooperatives existing at the village ward, secondary, the second tier, the secondary cooperatives, and so on at the local government, the third tier at the state headquarters, and the fourth tier, which is our fusions, when coming together of the apexes at the state, at the national level. Then we also said all national sectoral apexes come under a unified platform called Cooperative Federation of Nigeria. But it is not only at the national level that we have the Cooperative Federation of Nigeria. Like, if we will understand, if we take a particular state now, there will be a lot of cooperative societies that are into various sectors. Some will be into finance, some will be into housing, some will be into agriculture, some will be into mining, into transport. And each one of them, at the state level, they have their apexes. Like, God willing, the national housing cooperative will also have its own apex at each state headquarters level. But when it is formed, it is also going to meet apexes of agricultural cooperatives, apexes of finance cooperative, apexes of mining cooperatives, and so on. So when they come together, then they form a state federation. So we'll be hearing Cooperative Federation of Nigeria, or Nasarawa State Cooperative Federation, Imo State Cooperative Federation. Mean it is an amalgam, it is a coming together of different apexes. So, and right now, on the average, we have estimated about 3 million cooperative members. Unfortunately, we are still we are hoping that by this time next year, we will have conducted a more accurate census of the number of cooperative societies and the approximate number of cooperators. Cooperative society members are called cooperators. By the way, we'll never know where you will come in contact with cooperative societies, or where you might belong. You might be in their group. Cooperatives are like a society, not called like a society, like a sector. In fact, it is regarded as like the third sector. We have the public sector, we have the private sector, we have the cooperative sector, which is the third sector of the economy, and they have their peculiar greetings. So just for our information, because I will not want you to get to a cooperative forum and they are talking and it will be as if, what are these people saying? So cooperatives have their peculiar ways of saluting one another. And when they say cop, 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 you say cooperatives. When I say cop, 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 you say cooperative. If I say where, you say here, there, everywhere. So cop, 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 cooperatives. Where, here, there, everywhere. Meaning that cooperatives are supposed to be all over the places, every aspect of the economy, all the nooks and crannies of the country. So eventually, when the housing cooperative is also formed, it is expected to exist in all nooks and crannies of the country, so that it will also be able to respond to the appellation where, and they will say here, there, and everywhere. So then the next, okay, please, before I go, I was talking about the responsibilities of the states and the federal government with respect to cooperative registration and regulation. The State Department of Cooperatives register primary cooperative societies. They also register cooperative unions, and they register state apexes of cooperatives. We at the Abuja level, the Federal Department of Cooperatives, only register national apexes. The implication is that when an apex comes to us for registration, in real terms, they might have more than 2,000 or 3,000 cooperative societies. In fact, they can have up to 10,000 cooperative societies under them, with a population of about 1 million, 2 million or more. But we only interact with them at the national level. So if, for example, an investor wants to partner with cooperative societies, he can come to us. We link them with the officials, they call them executive committees or management committees of cooperative society, or at times they use board members or board of directors. So we link them, and they can now discuss. When you discuss with, if eventually the National Housing Cooperative is formed with their national officials, when you discuss, if a cement seller or iron rod seller comes to talk with the officials of the national apex of the National Housing Cooperatives, he might be talking to a few number of people that are going to give him contracts that will be worth billions, because they have members at the state level, at the local government, at the village level, at the community level. So it has a lot of implications. Then next slide. Now, coming to the crux of the matter, which is the procedure for forming national cooperative societies. By the way, I also wish to let us know that there are basically two types of cooperative societies. We have, especially at the national level, we have the national primaries and we have the national apexes. A big organization that has a national spread, like Federal Ministry of Agri or Federal Ministry of Transport or Shell, that have members in different states. You know, when they have, their members are usually the workers' cooperative. When they have such members in different states across the 5 geopolitical zones, they are allowed to form what is called a national primary, meaning that the national primaries are largely workers' cooperative of workers that have national spread, like ministries, multinational organizations, and such organizations. But the other societies that are into various sectors and subsectors of the economy form national apex cooperative society. So meaning that when national housing cooperative is to come on board, it is going to form a national apex, a national apex cooperative society. And for any society to get registered, like I said, all societies will have to start at the primary level. Even the national primaries of Federal Ministry of Agri or Ministry of Transport or Shell and others that have national primaries will still have to register their primary societies in their states of operation. Now, if an intending national primary has primary societies in a minimum of 5 states a minimum of 5 states in 5 different geopolitical zones, then they will now approach us. We go and cross-check that they are indeed in existence and they are functioning. Then there will be other conditions that have to be met before they are registered. And this below are some of the conditions or the procedure for forming and for registering primary societies. We have said that primary societies registered in at least 5 geopolitical zones. That is number 1 requirement. Then they approach the Federal Department of Cooperatives. We are going to give them a registration form to fill so that we know what the banks will say, KYC, know your customers. We have to be sure, because we are moving to a stage where we want to ensure that the public and other stakeholders have confidence in the cooperative societies. We want to move the cooperative sector to the level of the financial system, just like in finance, where CBN registers and regulates banks and ensure that whichever bank that CBN registers, they are sure that they cannot easily fail their customers. Then, after filling the registration form, they pay the requisite fee, very small amount. Then the Federal Department of Cooperatives arrange field visits to their offices and their areas of operations. Then we invite their officials for training. Education and training is a very, very important aspect of cooperative operation and management, because it is a sector that is knowledge driven. If the practitioners, if the members do not have adequate knowledge, very soon the cooperative is going to crash, is going to collapse, or there will be a lot of infighting. They will not be able to meet a number of conditions that other stakeholders like the financial institutions will demand of them. So we have to train them on group dynamics, cooperative principles and practices, bookkeeping, financial management, and writing of business plans, business proposals, and so on, so that they will be able to get the buy-in of stakeholders. So we also then, after the training, then they are given their certificate of registration. Then after then, they are expected to register with or to get affiliated with the Cooperative Federation of Nigeria. It is important that they get affiliated to the Cooperative Federation of Nigeria for several reasons. For us, it makes management of the cooperative system more efficient and easier. The Federal Department of Cooperatives does not have the capacity to manage about 4 or 5 million cooperative societies and so on. But with that structure, we can manage them through the CFN, and when partners want to work with them, it is easier for the partners to work through the CFN or at worst through the national AHFIS. Next slide. Then, and for the national AHFIS registration, that's slide 7. The national AHFIS registration is similar to the registration for the national primary, and like we said, the primaries are registered by the State Department of Cooperatives. They are aggregated into unions at the local governments, and then the unions are aggregated to form state AHFISs. And state AHFISs join across the state AHFISs join in the state to form the state federation. And the state AHFISs across 5 geographical zones aggregate, come together to form the national AHFIS. And then the national AHFISs join other AHFISs at the Cooperative Federation of Nigeria level. Just last week, the Cooperative Federation of Nigeria met in Abeokuta and elected their officials for the next 4 years. And incidentally, just like we have Cooperative Federation of Nigeria as the umbrella body of cooperatives, we also have the Cooperative Organization for Africa called International Cooperative Alliance, ICA. The president of Nigeria's CFN, Cooperative Federation of Nigeria, happens to be the president of the African region. ICA, International Cooperative Alliance, is a global body with headquarters in Brussels, in Belgium. The Nigerian that is the president of ICA is also a vice president of the global body. He was elected about 3 weeks ago. So then, of course, after the registration, then the real business now starts. The Nigeria's cooperative system is regulated by an act called Nigerian Cooperative Societies Act Cap N98 LFN 2004. So, okay, time is almost up. Okay, no problem. So, it is important for the cooperative societies to comply with the act. It's very, very important to ensure sanity and growth of the sector. And among the requirements is for the societies to submit their annual audit reports to their regulators. If they are primary societies, they are to report to the State Department of Cooperatives. If they are national AHFISs, then they should report to the Federal Department of Cooperatives. And it is after then we are going to give them the go-ahead to organize their AGM, and afterwards they can distribute their surplus. In cooperative sector, profit, what is profit in the regular business is called operating surplus in the cooperative parlance. And there are a number of considerations to decide what is going to be the operating surplus. So in essence, this is the procedure for registering a national, this is the procedure that will be followed in registering the National Housing Cooperative. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, another round of applause for that very interesting presentation. As you could see, he didn't require, much of the slides. He spoke passionately, clearly, gently, and it was very easy to understand, very clear, elucidated very well. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to move very quickly. Right now, we're going to go into an interactive session, which is the stakeholders interactive session and strategic action plan. After that, it's the wrap up, which is essential, the communique, and we can tidy that up. We already have here, first seated with us, as I mentioned before, Engineer Abubakar Jibril, who is the Director of Cooperatives, Federal Directorate of Cooperatives. He's seated here. To join him, I'd like to also call Mr. Adebayo Aziz. Can you please welcome him with a round of applause as he comes to join us at the podium? Also to join him, Alhaji Idris Umar. Alhaji Idris Umar, one of our conveners here. Thank you very much, sir. I also have Victor Oyegoke, President and CEO, Krason Cooperative Rating and Award Society of Nigeria. Please join us. Thank you very much. Now, in case if there's any other cooperative society here that you have not been mentioned, would like to just indicate which one, sir, please? Okay, please, ushers, please, can you just get the details from him and so that we can, but please come and join us. I would get the details from him, please. Thank you. So essentially this session will just be very short, a very brief, 10-15 minutes at most. I'm just talking about an interactive session on strategic action plans, issues that need to be clarified, the way forward before we do the formal presentation of the communique.
Hello?
All right, hurry up, can I have it, please?
I never finished.
Okay.
We were like that.
Thank you. Okay, he's from the FCT Non-Interest Cooperative Society. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a very important one. That's a financial cooperative society. All right. If there are no other cooperative society here present, all right, we can go ahead. There's one. Okay. Please, can we bring in the MDC or hydrophone? Thank you, sir. A round of applause for him. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. It's been a very beautiful day well spent, and I have no doubt that we are all going home with a load of information that we can use to improve how we used to do things, and then to move the industry forward. I actually think that one of the things that's very important is to not go back to the mindset that we used to have about what is possible, what is not possible. Innovation comes with having the mindset of we can do it. And if we fail, we try again. I believe why the convener and the organizer brought the dimensions of what's happening in other climes to the summit is for us to be able to see what is happening elsewhere and pick some experience from there that we can also go ahead and adopt. And I think the industry provides opportunity for collaboration. No man is an island. Cooperative will come together and do projects.
and that will be able to strengthen the capacity and the capability that they have to be able to do things. This type of summit is supposed to make us go back, and then we see a leap in terms of delivery of housings in the country. And I think that's what we need to do. A couple of initiatives that has coming from yesterday here, which is one of the areas that we need to be looking at, is that the cooperative should also embrace technology. It has a way by which it reduces cost on what we are doing, and it fast-track the process of some of the things that we're doing. And I belong to the school of thought that will not say that technology is only for the young people that are coming. It's about mindset. So if we open our minds to it, that's a way by which it will help us to move things forward. The other part that I want to mention, which is also very important, Prof was asking me before he left that the issue of governance and the solution to it in the country, that what is the solution? So I told him that we will find out that the issue of our culture, which cut across all sectors, all life, is where we'll come to. And if we just conclude on the fact that's our culture, that's Nigeria, that's the way we do it, politicians will not allow it, we will just remain like that. We need to begin to address those issues with determination and mindset that we must change from the way things used to be. We are sharing the experience that why I see that companies come up in Nigeria and in 10 years, 15 years time, they are no longer in existence. Whereas you have companies abroad that are 250 years old, and they are family businesses that have thrived over time. I think those are some of the things that we need to look at and have a mindset that is quite different from what we used to do. Then, I think one of the things you will see in the communique that we have put together that has to do with the cooperative that you mentioned is that if we don't get the details of what the people that spoke to us from the other countries, what they presented today, it's good to get the slides, if possible, from the organizers, so that you can go through it and study it, and it may just be one thing that you are able to implement, and then you will have be able to convince yourself that the time you spent in this conference was not wasted. So we can get the document, we can meet the people in charge, and then let's look at what they have said to us, and let's see how that could be adapted to our environment. And I believe we'll be able to improve as time goes on. I don't know if any of the people that's on the panel now, you have something that you have gained that you want to just mention briefly, and what you will go back to implement with your cooperative. Thank you. So it's open to anybody.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me greet you in cooperative tradition. I would say greetings. You're all welcome to this summit. I don't personally have much to say in respect to the basic cooperative principle that we intend to deliver. The big masculine. The big masculine here is that cooperative is the director of cooperative. He has said it all. Okay. He has just said it all. So there is no point going back to what he has delivered. We don't have much to say on what he has just delivered. And the only thing I will say here is to give an emphasis on the benefits which I, in particular, has seen my personal self and in other cooperatives, and what has happened to an individual. Now, there are a lot of benefits in cooperative, which many of us do not know. You see, and there is one principle that says, one man or a tree cannot make a forest. Do you believe in that? So also in cooperative. So you need many hands coming together And what he had just said by his definition, you see, cooperative is a business venture that you jointly own that business. So there are issues in cooperative where so many of us normally say, oh no, cooperative, when you get to cooperative, it's just a matter of looting our money. That is when you do not have a structure in that cooperative. And any cooperative that does not have a structure definitely is going to crash. So before you join a cooperative, you must have to study the cooperative. And what you study, what you ask for, you just ask for the bylaw of that cooperative. And the director has told you, the bylaw is derived from the Cooperative Act. So, and this is what governs your cooperative. So, I'll tell you one story that happened to a colleague while I was in the service. You know, I have worked in so many local governments, here, or area council, so we call it. Now, I was posted to Buhari Area Council. And when I got to Buhari Area Council, a lot many people were coming to register cooperative. But we don't have cooperative as in our own office there. I now noted the idea. Why don't you form a cooperative? They all agreed to join. Something happened along the line. You agree with me that the express road, do I call it express or the Kubwa Zuba road were under construction then? So this lady was coming from the Buhari, she lived in Buhari, and when just a month to her wedding, and I saw her the very day she had an accident along this very road. We had formed a cooperative already. She was the secretary of the cooperative. She was the secretary of the cooperative. Now, what happened then was that a beggar truck just came and crossed the road. You know, it was a single lane then. So the beggar vehicle crossed while the vehicle was coming in. And that was where the accident happened. And she had a compound fracture. Immediately, I passed her. I didn't know, I didn't stop. My mind was on that. I didn't know somebody of mine was in that vehicle. So I got to the office and I was told that, such a person had an accident and she was taken to Wuse Hospital. Sincerely speaking, I don't know what really happened to the medical sector in that place. She has bruises on that leg. And immediately what they did was that they POP'd the leg with the wound there. So the following day, she started having problems. And now they said that leg has to be. Report reaching the director in the office. The file was moving from one table to another table. For what? To source money to amputate that leg. And she was also given a reference letter to National Hospital. There in the National Hospital, they said they will not operate that leg or amputate that leg until they paid all the necessary fee. Now, no director will cough out 25,000 to get that leg amputated, and the leg was already going on. And what will happen next is tetanus. And once tetanus gets into other part of the body, and she ended. So this case brought to me, and I said, "What are we waiting for? She's a member of the cooperative. She's the secretary of the cooperative. We're going to give her money, interest free. We're not charging interest on that." And that 20,000 was taken to the hospital. That was how the debt got done. And no money came from the government. No money came from any director as an assistant. So you can see the benefit of cooperative. This woman would have done just a month to her wedding. This incident happened.
So that's a good example.
So you can see, this is another example. This is a very example that we need to join a very valuable cooperative, or we need to form ourselves into a cooperative. That is one example. Now, coming to the housing.
Do you want us to give the other details?
No, I just want to, just a bit, just getting to the housing, you know, we are talking of cooperative housing. We came into Abuja. Some of us were housed by the government, and some of us were just living on our own. So fortunately for me, I was housed by the government, which later that house was sold to me. And now I am a landlord. Now I have the next neighbor to me. You know the way these houses were built. If you live in Uwa, you know how the houses were built. My neighbor was a tenant. Now I had a problem with my neighbor. What was the problem was this generator. Now the generator was giving a lot of smoke, producing carbon to my own compound. I had to look for the landlord. When I got the landlord, I reported the case to the landlord. I never knew that there was other issues of no payment of rent. So the landlord said that, don't worry, I'm coming to see you in the evening. He came. So he now called his tenant. He said, hey, you're already a nuisance to the environment here. You can see, I do not know that it was a transfer of aggression because the man did not pay his rent. You know, when he started, I did not say, he said, and you have not paid my rent, and this is the issue. I was shocked. I said, what kind of thing is this? What I came for was a different thing. Just to advise the man to move his generator behind the house and peacefully. But he used me now to settle his own case. So you can see the issue, because we had that lecture yesterday, the issue of tenants and landlords. So I was coming to tell you that the easiest way we can own our house is through cooperative. And the professor also said yesterday, he said, the huge companies, the huge developers that are asking for a lot of money from, associations, cooperative, or others to build up these houses may not get it right. But when you start with cooperative, our little contributions, you contribute to 2,000, 100,000 in a month. In a month, you collect it. Then you can now take it to the source. And that is what Nish is trying to do. Because Nish has already gotten the off-takers. And the off-takers of Nish are cooperatives. The federal director is also aware of what Nish is into. So we don't have housing development in Nigeria to the level that Nish wanted to take it to. Because the convener of this summit was one time the permanent secretary who also initiated the fish project. Today, where is the fish project? So that is what we are trying to implement. We are trying to, the Nish is trying to implement the government effort by building up cooperative housing. None of us has yet achieved that. So I want to tell you that there are a lot of benefits in cooperative, and Nish is out there to assist. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We don't have more time again. Do we have one or two more comments on that, please?
Thank you very much. I want to comment slightly from a different perspective, because I observe most times in a forum like this, keep talking about different models for housing, and you see people talking about smart city. See people talking about smart cities, different kind of models. But one of the things that I keep looking at, because I had the days for the image, a lot of times, because we move around the country, especially the universities, higher institution of learning, and the challenge of student housing is key. I don't know if there's this kind of forum can really see how we can meet that need. Every year now, JAMB is chunking more than 2 million people out, in all these higher institutions. But it's over that the housing need have not been met. And government is not even discussing, talking about how do we meet this housing need. I happen to be a faculty team member in one of our organizations in in the US, that is NASCO, that is not American Student of Corporations, it's a student housing organization. And you look at that model, they've been existing since in the 70s, and till today they are making a lot of impact within the students, housing all over the US. And it's a model that we need to copy in Nigeria. In 2006, I was there, for a conference, and I discovered it's a model, and we try to come up with some things and say, okay, Nigeria, because sometimes regulations, because of the law that we are having today. In fact, when I follow the way we're talking about the law itself, the Nigerian Cooperative Societies Act, NCAP N98 LFN 2004 is outdated. There is need for the government, the National Legislation Assembly, to begin to see to that law. Without that, a lot of things will be limited. So I'm looking from the angle of, please, how this kind of forum begins to look into student housing as well. It's a challenge. And I can tell you, it's something that if people go into there, it's going to be profitable. I don't know why we're not looking at that side, so that our youth too can easily be engaged. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We still are, okay, please, can we briefly?
Okay, the Federal Director Cooperative actually spoken well. And sincerely, we have to focus on certain things. And those are the challenges and the problem we are facing in terms of cooperative society in Nigeria. I think this will be the first known, to me anyway, national discourse, maybe on cooperative society. No, cooperative society, society. Because it's a big deal, and government doesn't seem to be very serious about cooperative society. You see, we've identified several gaps in cooperative society. It's very good to have a viable cooperative society. We believe that we have a mandate. Our mandate is just to ensure that our members are able to secure free loan. That's our number one mandate, so that they can go into businesses and be able to get their car, build their own houses. It's purely free. Whatever you have, you multiply by 2. You give it to me, and the source is your salary. That's what we do. But we've identified that very many cooperative society are not doing well. And that's the fact. Some are doing well, but we are shying away from the truth. Federal Director is aware of this. And the problem is that they political gap. And that's the fact. As my senior person just said, the act is outdated. And that's just a fact. And it allows local government to control. It allows states to control. Then federal government doesn't have any control. Like the FCT, the staff that are there, they will go to all this cooperative society. They ask for some little fee as anything to audit their accounts. Then who are those guys? They are civil servants. Accounting processes. Accounting is a key thing that we are shining away from. You see, if we can fill in this gap, there's no any regulatory framework for cooperative society. Like the commercial banks, the FCPA that is regulating them. But cooperative society today are being regulated by local government, by states who are civil servants. And we know when I say civil servants, we know the way we are to civil servants. Because they see, most of the people that are managing cooperative society, they see it as a public fund. But these are hard-earned money of civil servants, and they mismanage it. Simply because nobody to control them. They are in charge. The federal authority, the state, local government that are being set up by the act to control them, they will only come and say how far, and they go. But if you can get to, maybe possibly they can engage child accountants, engage people who are professionals to audit their accounts. Sincerely, they are not doing it. In our own area, we realize that accounting processes, internal processes are the key thing. So we ensure that most of our processes are being automated, and that's a fact. Before, if you get it wrong in accounting, that's a fact. Their corporate governance is very poor. You see the president being in charge and the treasurer, they control the corporate society. So if they don't have that particular concept, corporate governance, whereby they need to show transparency and accountability. So I really appreciate your efforts for actually calling us to actually talk about this. Please, I want you to put more effort on this. Corporate society in Nigeria, they are not doing well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my contribution is simply that we always say that there is no money for housing in Nigeria. I want to challenge all the cooperatives today that the money for housing is is for us to work around getting the money together. I'll give you an example. Most of us have the money, but we don't know we have the money. I happen to work for an Iraqi bank some 30 years ago. That taught me a great lesson about the little drop of water that made a nation. The Iraqi man set up a supermarket. If you are familiar with Kenya, that bridge that takes you to Oba Accra, there's one at the foot of the bridge.
In their fingers, they get the houses without even a deposit, and they pay over the years. Why is our own different? I have one year in Nigeria. He paid to a developer. That was 2016, 2017. After about 1 year, the developer increased the price of the houses from 9 million to 15 million. Where is he going to get the money from? He's entitled to only 4 million naira loan. He was going to supplement, I was going to help him to get to 9 million. But 9 million to 15 million. Do you know what? To get back his 4 million deposit paid by the loans board, it took almost a year to get that back. And when that money was being paid, it was paid less 20% administrative fees. You know why? I cannot rest until we get this sorted out. So I must thank you for making this happen. And specifically, I want to thank the director of cooperatives. We met less than a month ago. It said something so touching to me. So, you are not asking for my help. Me, I need your help because I need a house. Can you clap for our guy? And he took it upon himself to be here today. He was even instructed to do certain things. He put them aside to be with us. Director, I appreciate you. And we are willing and ready to work with you to make sure that cooperative movement in Nigeria moves to the level in other countries like Kenya, Zimbabwe, Canada, South Africa. And please take note of comments by some of our panelists here. That act needs to be looked into. If there's anything we need to do, let's get it done. Because ours cannot be an exception. It's working everywhere, it must work here. Cooperators here, it's your time. We can only provide a platform. You have to come together. Let's stop working in silos. We must come together under one umbrella. Like he has told us, start from your state, FCT. If you have FRC, you have Navy, you have police, come together, put your resources. We heard from ASO savings, how we can aggregate the fund. It's fantastic. I don't know much of maths, but just look at 1,000 naira every month for 1 million people. Monthly contribution, multiplied by 12. You see that you don't need the banks to do your housing development. And I don't know whether we noted what the man from Kenya said, that they are actually contributing money to government. They own banks. So the government will borrow from their cooperatives to run the economy. We can do better than that. What's the population of Kenya compared to Nigeria? So if they can do it, we can do better. Thank you very much. We've spent a lot of time. Can you imagine that we're still here at this time? That means we take this thing very seriously. God bless you all. I appreciate you. After the group photograph with the panelists, please, everybody here should come up so that we can show that solidarity.
God bless you all. I appreciate you.